we have an attorney coming who will speak about estate planning and, in particular, special needs trusts. And actually, a fiduciary might also be coming with her, who just happens to be her husband. Beth Ojakian, as I said, my co-president of the board, knows John Costa, our speaker, very well, so he asked to introduce him. I know, I twisted his arm.
Let's see. We won't have as many here tonight. Board members who are here, why don't you raise your hands? So there's 4 of us. So if you have questions of the board, you can ask one of those 3 people. So I'll start, or I'll say this in a certain way. I'll tell you a story to get you acclimated to who John Costa is. The story is this. In 1997, I got elected to the Palo Alto City Council. Why did I run for office? I ran for office because my wife and I had children that were 16 years apart in age. We had a whole number of children, but older to younger. So I ran because unlike the typical image of Palo Alto, there were a lot of families who moved to Palo Alto and sacrificed their personal finances because they wanted their kids in the school district. You know, and we have neighborhood libraries and neighborhood parks and all the rest of it. There's a deep focus for children. So that's why I ran for office. 3 weeks into office, the city flooded. And all of a sudden, I found myself a guy very interested in the police department because they had to, we had one boat. Then, the fire department, they had one boat. We did all this stuff. So I got very interested in the police department. I used to go to all the events. Front and center in the Palo Alto Police Department. And now a retired, over 30-year veteran of the police department was John Costa. So the police department folks knew that I had an interest in the police department, so...
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Vic, for your very kind words. Is this too loud? What do you think? Is that all right? I won't have to shout. That'll be unusual. I'm Portuguese, right? There's no such thing as quiet and Portuguese in the same sentence. Those usually don't go together too well. No, Vic, thank you very much. And I tell you, it is, actually, can we turn this down? Where's the IT guru here? When you get a chance, John, thanks. I'm just getting a little feedback. I'll tell you, as great as the introduction is, I am absolutely privileged and honored to be here. And I wouldn't miss it. And I learned very early on that you never say no to Kathy Forward, okay? Because we've forged many great working relationships in the 5 years that I've been involved as a law enforcement liaison, working for Santa Clara County Behavioral Health in my very spacious cubicle at Urgent Care, not so much. And one of the best relationships that we have built has been with NAMI, certainly our predecessors before us. Tony Lopez and I, my other half, he's in Maui right now, if you want to picture that, with his wife on vacation. And Tony and I, we're the 2 law enforcement liaisons countywide. And I'll talk a little bit about what we do in that role. But I can't underscore enough how critical NAMI has been in supporting this program, in helping us develop the interactive video simulations, which we're going to do a demo of a little bit later on. And I just enjoy being here. And I tell you, the message, because we have to collaborate and bring all of these vastly different organizations together to work towards the goal of the best possible patient care. That's what we're all working towards. And we remind officers all the time. And really, my mantra in police work, as well as what we've tried to reinforce as liaisons, is a couple of things. First of all, for our officers because we're so involved, heavily involved in their ongoing training, not just their required training, but their ongoing perishable skill training and communications, is that we are everybody's officer all the time. We're everybody's cop all the time. Now, that may have a different meaning for different people, but for us, that means we're not just the people who are having a good day's police. We're not just the police for the people that smile and wave at us. We're everybody's police all the time. And the other half of that equation is that to be given the responsibility that we have as first responders, to have to work with people under challenging circumstances who are in crisis, who could be suicidal, who could be experiencing, along with their families, the worst possible moments in their life, that the best of us in our business as first responders, that we have to carry that as a sacred privilege. That just isn't another duty or responsibility. This is the message we give our officers. We talk a lot about best practice techniques and recognition and learning how to better read and react to these dynamic, challenging situations. But just as importantly is the spirit behind it, and that spirit is just that. It's a privilege to be given the responsibility of dealing with people, oftentimes in the worst moments of their life. It's a privilege. And I can't reinforce that enough, and there's no talk that I don't begin without laying that out first. So what do we do here? There's two of us that are the liaisons, myself and Tony Lopez. Vic introduced me. I was very honored to be a part of the Palo Alto Police Department for 31 years. I started back in '78 when I was 19, and I retired in '09. Tony Lopez, my other half, is a retired captain with Mountain View PD. And between the two of us, we've divided the county in the scope of our responsibilities. I have San Jose, Campbell, the CHP, and everything south to Gilroy. Tony has Santa Clara, Milpitas, the Sheriff's Department, and everything north up to Palo Alto. So there's really two halves of what we do. One half of what we do, I'm going to talk about it in a minute. That's what we have up here, the interactive video simulation training. The other half of what we do is a liaison. Just as not, if not more important, we serve as that bridge or conduit between mental health services. So we're former cops that understand the complexity, the legal issues, the challenges of having to navigate through the system as a uniformed officer / first responder. We bring that background, but we work for mental health. And our mission is to be that bridge, two-way street between mental health services across the board and consumers and family members that are desperately seeking connections with services with the assistance and support of law enforcement, that we all work together towards the same goal. And one of the challenges we had as an instructor was when we're providing this training and doing this outreach is to convince people, especially officers, they can be a tough audience. And they're like, okay, here's another instructor. We go through hours and hours of training. So what are you going to tell me that I don't know already, right? And here's what we remind them of. Again, everybody's cop all the time, number one. And number two, whether you're a clinician at urgent care or a doctor at Central Wellness or a NAMI rep working the warm line or a homeless outreach worker in an encampment or a police officer on the street, you know what? We all serve the same client. We're all serving the same person. And it makes sense for us to communicate and do teamwork and have a better understanding of what each other does towards the end result of getting people connected into services, and hopefully through that teamwork, and we all know that at times that requires a certain layer and application of law enforcement too, as many of these situations can be unpredictable and even unsafe. We work together to improve that approach, because law enforcement alone, not enough. Not enough. Can't be just the solution. The solution can't be just hire a bunch more cops. Not enough. Nor can we burden mental health services alone or nonprofits alone. It's a huge challenge. We work together. We work together to problem solve, and we work together to reduce the stigma that so often prevents or delays patients and families from accessing services. Reduce the stigma of accumulative stress and anxiety, of depression, of suicidal ideation. Break down these barriers, talk to each other, and realize that we all have challenges and we have to work together towards a goal. That's what we do as a liaison. We're that conduit between. Sometimes law enforcement reaches out seeking mental health services. Those referrals have continued to grow every year. The culture is changing. Law enforcement goes, I just can't approach this as a law enforcement official. I have to drill down to the root cause. What's the problem here? It may not be somebody going to jail. It may not be contributing to the exigency of a circumstance and forcing a confrontation. It may be having to slow things down and communicating and looking for those problem-solving measures through other services. And that's what we try to do, is bring them together. And I was blessed. I talked to a couple of families tonight that came up to me that I had helped over the past 4 years. Nothing more rewarding than that. Nothing more rewarding than that. To hear a family say, our son, our daughter is stable, they are in treatment, they're taking their medication, they're living a full and productive life, because such a big part of our training is giving people that hope and reminding officers that they can empower people to have that hope. That's half of what we do. The other half of what we do is the interactive video simulation training. And with the help, the great deal of help from NAMI, and we have John back there, who I believe was nominated for an Academy Award for his performance in one of these simulations. I may just break that out today just for fun. And so we have these simulations that depict people in crisis, because you know what? It's not just good enough to talk to cops. They're doers, they're fixers, they're hands-on people. And we found that engaging them in these simulations that depict people in crisis gives them an opportunity, real time, in a safe environment, to apply those best practice tactical communication techniques. And it's a great training platform. I've been involved in police training for nearly 40 years. And as instructors, you have the really dynamic topics, high-speed pursuit driving. Okay, how can you not make that interesting, right? You're out there on a track, and it's like you're playing a video game. You kidding me? That stuff's, you think it would be easy to teach. And people say, man, that's got to be a really challenging subject matter. How do you bring it to life? You know what? It's been one of the easiest. We bring it to life by speaking to the heart and giving people not just the mechanics of what to do. That's easy. We can give people a cheat sheet for that. It's giving them the spirit of why we should be doing it. Why? Because if people understand why, if they grasp that, then that motivation kicks in. And that's when we see the excellent work. The 4-hour program, and we've since expanded it to, we have a second state certified program of 8 hours, which gets more into the legal aspects, case law. The 4-hour version, we've trained over 10,000 officers statewide, over 6,000 in Santa Clara County alone. We're very blessed and lucky that we have police departments that are committed to this type of training. Did anybody read the recent grand jury report? Did they read that? Okay, you want to read that. If you took the time to come here tonight, you want to read the grand jury report. Kathy, I sent you a copy of that. I don't know if you could make an attachment, make that part of the website. Really important to read that. The Santa Clara County Civil Grand Jury, talking about the training that we provide here in the county and what other things we can do. It's great. And what's cool about tonight, and what I love about speaking with audiences like this, is that I love to share firsthand not just the structure or the outline of the training, but for you to get a glimpse in exactly the training that our officers are getting. Hearing the same message, going through the same debriefing, the same review of the simulations. You should see what training the officers are getting. You should see that, because I think you have a right to see that. I was really big into transparency from a profession that tends to be very conservative and guarded. I was not always popular, Vic, when it came to the transparency. I go, who the heck are we working for here? Did you do something wrong? Do you have something to hide? Well, no, of course not. Then let's share it. We understand there's privacy issues, of course, but there's many other things we can share, and this is one of them. And quite frankly, 25, 30 years ago, this would never be happening. They wouldn't allow it. They wouldn't allow it. Afraid of, I don't know, what, undue criticism or whatever. This was originally started, this program, in 2008 by Pat Dwyer, my former police chief, Kathy McKenna, Dave Newman were originally the team. Tony and I were generation number 2. We're like the sequel to the original Star Wars. And we had many stakeholders involved in this, both at the local, state, and legislative arenas that reviewed this. And we're very proud that the 2 recent pieces of legislation passed, 2 years ago, by State Senator Jim Bell, who's been a huge supporter of mental health training and the mental health cause, that we were selected to do the, the audition for one form of police training. So we represented the whole state as far as law enforcement training goes. And we got to go do this little presentation up at the state capitol with the subcommittees. And it was a great experience. And we got to share some of these sentiments. The focus groups, again, involved many different people, all towards achieving that POST certification. If you don't know what POST is, that stands for Police Officer Standards and Training. They standardize and certify and award completion credits to officers. And the training on mental health now, due in part to Senator Bell's legislation and the many supporters, every 2 years, every police officer statewide must receive a minimum of 4 hours of perishable skill training on tactical communication, specifically with people either in a mental health crisis or intellectually disabled. Okay? Those are the 2 layers there. 4-hour minimum. If you're a training officer or a supervisor, like a sergeant, you have to go through an additional 8 hours of training before you can function in that capacity. Because those people that are training and supervising others, we think they need to know a little bit more than the people that are actually doing the work. When we all know that it's usually the reverse, right? Right? Because I don't know how many times as a sergeant I went to officers and I said, what are we supposed to do here again? You remember? All right? That's just the nature of things, no matter what you do for a living. And then at the police academy, the basic academy, when this training started, officers received 6 hours of training specifically on dealing with people with mental health challenges. 6 hours. And that included giving them the authority to write a 5150 hold. Do we have any clinicians here? Anybody here licensed to write a hold? How many hours did you have to take to be able to do that? Yeah. Officers, 6 hours. You're good. Good to go. But why do we do that? They're by default our first responders, not a clinician. Okay? Not a clinician. Right now, there's still some things broken. Okay, for people in crisis, we don't send a clinician or a doctor or a nurse or a caseworker. We send a cop. Okay? Big challenge. Big challenge for them. Big challenge for the cop, too, when they're trying to overcome that barrier. Okay? The majority of mental health services, statewide, where are they provided? Where are they administered? What do you think? Don't be shy, just shout it out. Jails and prisons. LA County Jail provides more mental health services on a daily basis than any institution in the entire country. Not a hospital, not an outpatient clinic or an inpatient clinic or a facility. No, it's our jail. Something wrong with that picture. This is what we talk about when we have the privilege to speak at the state legislature. We got some huge obstacles to overcome. And because of that, our officers need to be better prepared, because this is not going to get fixed overnight. Didn't get this way overnight. It is not going to be rebuilt overnight. Our officers have to be better trained. So what are we training them on? With these scenarios, I won't bother reading these to you, but these are some of the simulations that we have that depict people exhibiting behaviors that would be consistent with this background and these disorders. What is our goal? The same goal as the state, national, and international tenets of crisis intervention. CIT training. We've all been told, if you call the police, if you have a loved one, a friend, somebody you care about who's in crisis, even if it's yourself, request a CIT trained officer. Chances are, luckily, in the Bay Area, you're going to have a really good chance of getting more than one. And the tenets, why do we do this training? To reduce the death and injury to both officers and people that are dealing with these disorders. To reduce the need for use of force. Wrapping around, finishing strong, increasing entry for people into services. Reducing unnecessary CFS, calls for service. Arrests, incarcerations that clog the criminal justice system. If the root cause of the issue, when we talk about drilling down, if the root cause is steeped in mental health, why have we approached that as a criminal justice problem? Although we recognize sometimes the structure of the criminal justice system and being blessed with a Judge Manley and Judge Manley's court, that the criminal justice system, another example, working hand in hand with mental health services, with the patients, with the consumers and their families, to try to navigate those difficult waters of the criminal justice system, recognizing when we need to get people into services and recovery, which may not mean jail. Although the catalyst for change sometimes involves kind of hitting rock bottom and getting arrested, right? I've talked to plenty of families that said, John, I don't like my son or daughter being in jail, but it is the best thing that ever happened. Is that true in every case? No. Because in police work and like in life, there's no such thing as there's never a never and there's never an always. It's everything in between, right? Very little black and white. It's a big, important shade of gray. And we know that sometimes that can be a catalyst for change. All about that teamwork, having to pull those resources together. And then finally, the last tenet is reducing stigma. And it's also reducing the stigma to where we coach up officers. We need to approach these mental health challenges and cases the same way you would a medical aid call. Okay? We shouldn't look at somebody. I mean, of course, we have to balance the public safety and those issues, of course. But in many, many cases, in the vast majority of cases, we know that by simply being diagnosed with even a serious disorder, someone is no more likely to be violent than any other population group. In fact, they're more apt to have violence committed against them. We know that definitively. And coaching up officers, do the problem solving. If this person was having a seizure or was in diabetic shock or having a stroke or a cardiac arrest, we would handle that very differently than we do a mental health case. Remove the judgment. Okay, don't bite on those symptoms and take those things personal. Step back. Have a better understanding of what we're dealing with. And with that better understanding, have best practice techniques to de-escalate, build some trust, make a connection, and if possible, gain compliance versus having to take control and living true to these tenets of CIT. After each scenario, we get feedback. We talk to the officers in front of all the other officers. What went right? What went wrong? What was confusing to you? What was the takeaway for you? What is something that you learned that you didn't know before? We debrief those just like we would after a call in the field. So it's very familiar to them. All right. Any questions about what we do as liaisons or the training? Yeah, what's your name? Hello, Carol. Correct. Well, typically, an officer is going to oppose that emergency protective order with the backing of the intended victim or the victim, if it led to a criminal charge. If it's related to a domestic violence or a family violence, that could be taken out of their hands. Yeah. 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 To some degree, in certain cases of domestic violence, family violence, elder abuse, there are certain steps that may need to be taken depending on the circumstances and the severity of the case, and that's what it's based on. But in most cases, the restraining order has to be initiated by the family member. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that the feedback that I've gotten from family members is that they're juggling and balancing the dilemma of walking a fine line between enabling and providing that person and their family with some structure where the guardrails are a little closer. Because maybe sometimes people in crisis need more guardrails and not less. If they knew what to do in any given situation, if they were comfortable doing that, then they would be doing that. So sometimes I think that structure can be helpful, but not in every case. Every case is different. Yes, absolutely. We have our family services unit with the county. They can be an advocate, and I'll tell you, even as liaisons, Tony and I can run a little interference and try to get answers to some of those questions too. Help people navigate through the system. Sometimes when people get into court, they can have a restraining order tweaked or adjusted to what they call a friendly order, meaning the order's in place as long as everybody's playing by the rules. But the person who's being protected can shift gears on that if things get out of control. So there's a lot of different levels. But the family services are indeed a great resource. And our family services that work, Diana Guido, right? Right. We have a great team over there, and they're always available. Dave.
Is there a difference in the way
Dave, that's a huge question. I know that everybody is committed up front to reduce the stigma and the challenge of bias policing. The training has increased dramatically. I teach portions of that at the basic academy to get to officers at a very young age to overcome those barriers, that judgment, those biases. I can tell you that over the course of my nearly 40 years in the business, I think we are further down the road in a positive direction than we were when I started in 1978. Is it where we need to be? No, because as long as you have human beings doing this job, there's always going to be challenges. I'm first generation American. Okay? My parents are from the old country. English was my third language. So I have some personal experience in that regard as well, but I don't pretend to understand, and as empathetic as we try to be, I can never understand everybody's position and where they're coming from. But what we have to do is be committed to listening. And that's kind of a lousy answer, Dave, because you know what? There's no statistics for this stuff. If you ask me my personal feeling, is it getting better? Do we have a greater level of consciousness? Is there more training? Are people being held accountable more? Yes. Is it perfect? No. No, it's not. And I don't know if it ever will be perfect, but I have to believe it's going to be better than it was 20 years ago, and in 20 years, it'll be better. When we have more officers of color, when we have more gender hiring. San Jose PD, we just taught at their basic academy. They had 70 officers. 1/3 were women. 1/3. When I went through the academy, 1. And there hadn't been one for a couple of years, right? Things are changing. Now we have police departments. And I refer to San Jose because most of us live here and that's the biggest department. I look at San Jose and their face reflects more of what the community is than what they did 30 years ago. You didn't have the number of women, Latino officers, Asian officers, especially Vietnamese officers. There's a huge community here. Chinese officers, Portuguese American officers. You know, we celebrate that diversity because that's what makes this a great place to live, in part, is the diversity. Other questions? Hang on just a second. Hey, John, we need to turn this screen off. Where's John? Okay. Yeah, if we could turn that off, then I can fire up the rest here. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Yes. Yeah, we provide that in the 8-hour class, and they teach that in the 40-hour CIT Academy, where we tell them that's kind of the world Tony and I live in. It's a power of information. I tell families all the time, I don't interact with the consumers and the clients, ever, because I'm not a clinician or a doctor. I'm the example that if you stay in community college long enough, eventually they make you the teacher. That was kind of... So, but I do. Hey, I take the job seriously. I don't take myself seriously, sorry. But you know what? It's a great question, and I tell family members all the time, write up this testimonial so I can submit this to our clinical staff. I can never describe something as well as a mother or a father, for example. I could never do that. I could never paraphrase. And I was an English journalism major. I could never tell the story with the same depth and heart as a mom and a dad would. So I tell them, I want you to write it up. I'm going to underscore and paraphrase your statements, and I want you to keep a copy of it for that reason. Give to the officers. If they come to the house, if your son or daughter, whoever the significant other is, if they're being placed on a hold, throw that in an envelope, hand it to the officer, say, can you accompany this to the facility that they're going to? Right? We think that's really important. the more information that the treatment teams and the doctors have, the better chance we have, we hope, of an accurate initial assessment, which leads, hopefully, to somebody being stabilized, which leads to longer-term recovery. But that first step is so critical. The more info they have, the better. That's why it's important for the police and mental health services to communicate and collaborate. Very important. One more question, and then I want to turn to the thing. Yes, ma'am. Yes. So Tony and I in our county, we have not one but two 40-hour CIT academies. San Jose PD has one, and Catherine Parlett at the Learning Partnership manages the other one for the county. And Tony and I, we do this 4-hour block as part of the we're the grand finale. We're the last afternoon there. We're there not because we're really that special or the grand finale, but that's the day that NAMI provides the lunch. And I got to do sorry, I'm not passing up on a free lunch. So they say, John, your class is from 1 to 5. I'm there at 11:30 because I like to give myself enough time to get set up. Okay, so I already have one of our simulations queued up. I'll tell people that these are really well done. I mean, they're really well done. This one has professional actors, unlike John's. This was a professional actor, and she is a woman who's having a psychotic break on a school bus. Some of you may have seen this. And we have officers come up in pairs, and you're a clinician. I'm going to recruit you, brother, to come up and then who would like to, what's your name again? Doug. Who would like to come up with Doug? Because we always have officers come up in pairs. Who would like to come up with Doug? There's nothing dangerous. No babies are going to jump out with AR-15s. There's nothing like that. There's no force options. But I need you, Doug, come on up. And who would you want to come up? So we'll have John and Doug, and you're going to stand and face the screen. Okay? And so this is really cool because you get to see, again, the training that officers get. So first it starts off with a radio call, and it kind of goes like this.
Unit 8200, respond to need RP at the corner of Kurtner and Canoas Garden. RP, who is a school bus driver, states that approximately 5150 woman just got on the school bus at its last scheduled stop and refuses to get off the bus. RP states the woman is pacing back and forth on the bus and screaming obscenities. The RP has safely removed all the children.
Okay, I'll pause. So they hear a radio call just like they would in real life to give them that real life context. Now, this is the bus driver who's the reporting party, because typically when the police respond to calls, at least in a public place, they usually have somebody that called. And so we have this gentleman who's a retired San Jose police sergeant is going to report this.
I was letting my kids off at this stop here, and this lady came running up. She jumped on the bus. She started scaring all the kids. I got all the kids off, and she won't leave. She's running all around saying that the bus is dangerous and that she just won't get off.
Okay, so now, once he finishes his spiel, or if the woman you contact, you are going to talk to her. You can ask him or her any questions. And I could say, hey, Brian, we've done this a million times. Is this like the greatest training program ever or what?
Yes.
See, it works just like that. So I have a series of branch responses. Now, we didn't think of everything. And you can't have a million responses here because you couldn't scroll through it quick enough. So we have primary responses. And if it's something that you ask that we don't have an appropriate response for, then Tony and I tell the users, you may hear me talking on their behalf. Okay, so right now, nothing dangerous, no weapons. We're going to talk to this woman. So we could typically ask him, an officer would say, okay, sir, just confirm there's nobody else on the bus. She's the only one on the bus, right?
Yes.
Okay. And did she have any weapons with her?
I haven't seen any, but she's got a backpack with her.
Okay. And what does she look like? Where is she right now?
She's the white woman at the back of the bus. She's screaming and yelling back there.
Okay. Well, we're going to go talk to her and see if we can find out what's going on. I'm glad everybody's safe and okay. So if you can wait here, we'll come right back and check in with you.
How long is this going to take?
Hopefully not long. Okay, so now you're going to segue onto the bus, and here's this woman. Now for you two, officers are going to know what their mission is here. For you two, your mission is to try to find out what's going on with her and merely get her to step off the bus. Now, officers have a myriad of responsibilities. They're there to make sure that no crime's committed. Is it safe? Are there weapons? All those investigative things, right? In addition to one of the tenets of our training, we want to gain compliance, if possible, and not have to take control. Gain compliance versus taking control. Through what? Through these best practice techniques. If you have the tactical advantage of time and distance, if you're safe, and right now we're safe. Anybody feel immediately afraid right now? No, we can see her hands. There's no indication of any weapons. She's not being aggressive. What's her overriding emotion, do you think? Fear. So we're going to talk about the acknowledgement step here in a minute. But officers are told you want to read and react accurately to this person's behavior. And then if you have a better understanding through the training, like give me one symptom that you see her experiencing. What symptoms do you see behaviorally? Agitation, what else? Very paranoid. How about behaviorally? What's she doing? Anxiety? What's she doing? Fearful, pacing. She's talking to herself or somebody else. She could be experiencing an auditory hallucination. So prior to this, we coached up officers that if you recognize that somebody is experiencing like an auditory hallucination, don't challenge that. Don't dismiss it. Even if it's a well-intended reassurance. There's nobody else here. It's okay. Do they believe that? No. That is their truth and reality. So what we coach officers up in the lecture portion is to acknowledge this person's behavior and what they're seeing, and then bridge over to the problem-solving steps that are actually real. And we'll talk about some examples of that. So I want you to think about that. Acknowledging what somebody's going through, what they're telling you, what they're exhibiting, and then steering it to a positive, supportive acknowledgement and problem solving. So she's all yours. You can ask her anything you want. Okay, one thing we tell officers, and you just fell into the first trap. If you want people, if you want to get along with somebody, what's the first thing we do? Greet, that was good. But if you get somebody's name, psychologically we know, good practice, good communications. If you've exchanged names, somebody is more likely to listen to you. Somebody's more likely to listen for that little step. If we can convey to somebody this, and this is exactly what we tell the cops. If you can convey to somebody, number one, I'm listening to you, and number two, that I kind of get it, if you can convince them of that, I'm listening and I kind of understand, you have a better chance of influencing that person's behavior in a positive way and introducing ideas to that person. If you fail to do that, it's going to be really hard to gain compliance. So you meet somebody for the first time at a party. Yeah, exactly. So let's start over again. Introduce yourself. Let's get a name.
Tammy Smith. Go away and leave me alone. Leave me alone. Maybe.
Would you like to talk about it?
I can't get off the bus because something bad is going to happen to me.
That's funny. That's such a simple, great question. But officers before the training are hesitant to ask that. Why do you think they'd be hesitant to ask? And I know this because we ask them. It's a logical question. Of course, but officers fail to do that so often. Why do they hesitate to do that? Because they're afraid it's going to make it worse. Are we making it worse by asking? No, because that is their truth and reality. So ask again the question you just asked.
They won't let me tell you. I can't tell you. I can't tell you. No.
Okay. What can you do about that?
I don't know. No. If I get off the bus, I have to kill myself. I can't get off the bus.
Okay. Is there any way we can talk to them?
I can't tell you.
It's really hard.
Yes.
Is there a way we can talk right now about it?
Maybe.
Okay. What can we talk about?
No. Get off. Get. No.
Now, you're doing a terrific job, and this is exactly what we reinforce with our officers. Slow down. If you have the tactical advantage of time and distance, what we teach is time plus distance equals options. Now, in a potentially unpredictable situation, do you want more options or less? Of course we want more. Of course. If you move in too soon, if we marched down that aisle of that bus right away and said, hey, you need to get off the bus, let's go, what's going to happen? What's likely to happen? It's going to turn into a fight. She's paranoid. She's afraid. We don't know how she is processing who we are. We could be a part of the hallucination. So we tell officers, if you sense that somebody is experiencing an auditory or visual hallucination, slow down, step back, be concise. Simple questions, just like what you're asking. Give people time to respond. Don't rapid fire questions. Don't fill the space. Be patient. Time and talk is cheap. We'd much rather talk to people for 10 minutes than end up on the ground with them. What are we doing? Right? And we know that when we analyze the success stories, we find that certain things took place to lead to a success, meaning that we were able to gain compliance without having to physically take control or use force. And those elements were being patient, being reassuring, having a calm voice, being clear and concise, giving people a chance to respond. One thing that I'm not hearing enough from you guys, and what we'd be encouraging the hell out of officers to do, is to acknowledge her fear. Because empathy is one of the most powerful tools in communication that we don't utilize enough. And so when she says, you did it a little bit, when you said, I think that has to be really difficult or scary. We can underscore that when she looks afraid and she goes, I can't get off the bus because something bad's going to happen. We tend to jump to the problem solving. Okay, can you tell me what bad is going to happen? Maybe we can help you. We're jumping to the problem solving quick. If we want to be effective in the problem solving in terms of tactical communication, then we have to lay the foundation. And the foundation, again, is those two things. I'm listening and I understand a little bit about what you're going through. The problem solving is more effective if that person believes that. If we say, Tammy says again, I can't get off the bus because something bad's going to happen. Wow, Tammy, you really look afraid right now. That has to be really scary for you. Yes, I'm really scared. I know, I can see how afraid you are. You know what? Knowing how afraid you are, do you want to talk about maybe some ways we can work together where you don't have to be afraid? An example of that, urgent care. Young man came in, really afraid. You guys are doing terrific. By the way, you're thinking John isn't doing much. His steely-eyed gaze is having a very calming effect on this whole thing right now. Okay, so this young man was at urgent care, and the deputy was talking to him, and he was really afraid. So I walked by, and the deputy looked at me and said, hey, can you help me out? You teach this stuff, right? So again, normally I don't work with I don't interface with clients, but at urgent care, I back up right to the lobby, and we're waiting for a clinician to come over, and I said, hey, how you doing? Man, I'm really afraid. I got these demons have been fought. And this guy is shaking in fear. And I go, dude, and the deputy was saying, there's no demons here. There's no demons here. Does he believe that? No. No, what have you just become when you even if it's well-intended, even if it's reassuring, what have you just become when you say there's no demons in their mind? What have you just become? The latest person who doesn't believe me. And if you don't believe me, I don't want to talk to you. So I looked at the guy and I go, wow, dude, you're really afraid. I can see. Can I ask you again, what are you afraid of? He goes, can you see the demon's face in the tile? Okay, was there a demon's face in the tile? Probably not. I don't know. So I looked. And I looked down and I said, hey, you know what? Bill, right? Hey, Bill, I don't see the demon's face, but I believe that you do. Okay? I acknowledge their fear. I acknowledge their reality, but you don't have to play into it. Dude, you're hearing a lot of voices. Tammy, I can see you're hearing a lot of voices. Right now, can you try to pay attention to my voice? Okay? We're not dismissing their reality. We're not disrespecting it. That is real to them. It doesn't matter what we believe is true. We're not the one in crisis. And this is exactly the debriefing and message we give officers with those living examples. So I said, dude, can I make a suggestion? Maybe if we sat outside by the grass, maybe the demon can't follow you. You said tile, right? Yeah, I'll try anything. We went outside. He sat on the bench in front of the grass. Immediate relief washed over him. And then the clinician came over and said, oh, John, yeah, great job. Why don't you have him come into the interview room? Yeah, I don't think so. You may want to talk to him by the grass. Oh, John, but we never talk to people by the grass. Look, I'm the guy with a community college degree. I don't want to second guess your clinical background. I'm just telling you, you may want to talk to this dude by the grass. Because right now he's smiling and he's really feeling safe. And as soon as we go in there, that's going to be over. So she goes, well, we'll give it a try. And she did. And she walked in, and 30 seconds later, they were sitting out by the grass again. You know, a little different approach. What works, right? So now I want you to keep pushing, and I want you to try to talk her off the bus, heavy on the acknowledgement first, then the problem solving. Empathy, acknowledgement, use that as the bridge to the problem solving. Okay, she's all yours.
Yes. Maybe. You're not going to hurt me, are you?
Let's explore. Let's talk about going outside.
Yes. You're not going to hurt me, are you?
Here she comes, and she's even bringing you the medication. So take the medication right now. Take the medication. There you go. That is awesome. Give these guys a big round of applause. Okay. Okay, stay up here and try to speak up, or I'll get next to you with the mic. Okay, so the same thing we would tell officers after each one of these. Sometimes we debrief it as we go along. We call the timeouts for those teaching moments to insert certain principles. So I would ask you, okay, what felt comfortable about this for you? Yeah, empathy, right? Passion, understanding, empathy. Empathy, is there anything wrong with sympathy? Okay? If we're consoling someone who just lost, if I told you, my mother just passed away, what would a sympathetic thing that you'd say to me? Just sympathetic, what would it be? Okay? Anything wrong with that? Is there anything wrong with sympathy? No, there's nothing wrong with sympathy. And what we tell officers is sympathy combined with empathy, more powerful. Hey, look, I'm really sorry for your loss. This has to be an incredibly difficult time for you and your family right now. You really must be in a lot of pain. Yes, I am. Maybe at some point would you be willing to talk to someone about helping you and your family through this difficult time? We have some great services. I realize this may not be the time. I want you to know that we're here for you. Empathy. When you tell people, another little element, when we coach up officers, and you tell people, I understand how you feel, you better understand how they feel. We tell officers all the time, it could be well intended. If you say, I know how you feel. Go ahead and sit down, guys. Give them another round of applause. If you tell people, I know how you feel, you better understand how they feel. We tell young officers, if you're talking to gang members on the street or somebody who's a career criminal and you grew up in Saratoga or Palo Alto and you were never a part of that lifestyle, don't act street. Don't try to be, because who's going to see right through that? I go, don't do that. You're better off saying, I don't know nothing about this. Don't respect that. Don't act like you're a street person. Don't act like you're a hardened, street, savvy person who's been through the trenches. They're going to see right through it. Nothing, we tell people, nothing plays like sincerity. I remember a very young, well-meaning officer, 23 years old, World War II veteran, reached out to the suicide hotline. And we intervened, luckily. And he had been suffering from undiagnosed PTSD from the Second World War and the Korean War. He was in his 80s. I was his training officer. And this young man, he said, my wife passed away several months ago, and I've had just terrible lifelong diseases, and I'm just done. I'm done. And that's why I decided to take my own life. And he goes, oh, well, you know, I know how you feel. And he had lost his dad. And the old guy looked at him and he laughed a little bit. He goes, you know how I feel. You know how I feel. You. He goes, how old are you? Oh, I'm 23. Kid, I got socks older than you. Okay? He goes, I fought in 2 wars. I raised a family. I was married for 52 years. I raised 6 kids. I started and shut down 2 businesses, and you know how I feel? Right? It's a slippery slope. That's one of those lessons that we talk to officers about. Sometimes it's better off to go, look, There's no possible way. I know how you feel. But what I do know is this has to be an incredibly painful time for you to reach out like this. And we're here to help you. Empathy. You don't have to have lived it to be empathetic. It's so simple, but it's so difficult. And it's the stigma. We tell officers, be direct with somebody who you think might be suicidal. Don't sugarcoat it. Don't try to skirt the issue. They are very likely perfectly at ease with the ideation of suicide. You're the one that's uncomfortable. You need to overcome that and be that positive influence. Be that person to interact with them in a way to steer them in a different direction. Right? We talk about all those things. In fact, we have 3 simulations that involve suicidal people. So, Dave, don't get greedy with the questions, Dave. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Would it be all right to have
Yes. Yeah, especially for an officer, because they need to know, do you have a plan? Because can somebody say, you know what, screw it, I just want to die, and not be suicidal? Of course. Of course. Absolutely. We have to peel back the layers. Hey, let me ask you, what was your plan on doing this? Have you tried it before? They're comfortable. We are not going to trigger the act by bringing it up. Just like with people, when you were asking questions about the voices that she was hearing. Is it a good thing or a bad thing to ask what the voices are saying? It's a very good thing. We encourage, but 30 years ago, our training was don't ask, you're going to make it worse. Training, completely, 180. Now it's, we want to know, is it a command voice? Are you comfortable telling me what the voices are saying? Okay, that has to be really scary. Right now, can you listen to my voice? So we teach a different methodology. Acknowledgement, and then steer it towards something that's reality-based, right? And there's many other do's and don'ts we give to officers to try to build that toolbox of best practice techniques. And I wish we had more time, and I already have you on overtime, but I thought we would finish with the Academy Award-winning performance here. I have to. I'm sorry. I have to. Hang on. Come down, John. Come down. Everybody, here's the Academy Award-winning scene right here.
I called you about my son, Gary. He has schizophrenia, and he's been acting up. I think he's off his meds. He's very hard to work with. He's very ill. He needs help. Please get him some help. You've taken him to the hospital a couple of times, but he's always brought back too soon. Please get him some help. I think he's probably drinking again, too.
Hey, John, my friend, are you ready to send everybody home today?
Yes?
Okay, let's do it. Okay. That is our favorite and most requested simulation of all time. That is true. We had tremendous stakeholders that helped us produce these. We had, John, you were there. There were directors and people from all these disciplines, from suicide prevention, NAMI, mental health, Central Wellness, the Morgan Center for Autism. We had all these great, talented people offering advice, and it was a great experience. And we just got tentative funding, Kathy, to produce another 12 simulations. So we're really excited about that. And also to buy... Yes. You know why John wants me to play that? Because he gets a royalty check every time we do that. Thank you so much, everybody.
So much, John. Thank you for making a difference in our society. You know, I mean,
Thanks,
I
Kath.
think